With Sushant, yeah. I mean, it was just a very cool. He was totally, he was very curious. He was very just deeply curious, incredibly intelligent. So we had a lot of just really cool conversations about a whole myriad of topics. And yeah, I thought he was a really good actor, and I thought he was a really, really good guy. I didn't come here with the intention of doing this. I didn't know anything about Bollywood. I didn't know anything about the families. I asked a friend of mine when I came here, I said, a new friend that I had met here, and I said, put together a real interesting, diverse list of actors.
Okay.
And he wrote down this huge list, and I didn't recognize. I thought, Salman Khan, I think that sounds familiar. That was it. That's all I knew. Rajamouli is so he's so easy to be around, and you can just go right up and talk to him. Not that I had any reason to that much, but if I wanted to, I could, and did a few times. And yeah, and the stars were great. I mean, that was also a very positive work experience. It was also very cool. No shouting. Everyone's cool. Like everyone, it was a very relaxed set. No tantrums. I feel like everyone that I was hanging out with, that I was hanging out with, interacting with, like Huma was always around. Swara was always there. I mean, Ranveer had just done, we only hung out a few times only because I was hanging out with Shanu a lot. But Ranveer was there, but he had just done that, his first big film. And so he was, so he was off and running.
Welcome to News 18 Showsha. I'm Yatamanyu Narain, and I'm with Mark Bennington, a multi-talented actor, photographer, drummer, author, whom you have all seen in countless series like RRR, Family Man, Rocket Boys, and so many others. So welcome to the show, Mark. How are you?
Thank you. I'm really good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Right. So, I'm sure a lot of our Indian audience recognize you already. But for those who have only seen you act and have no idea about your journey, I would like you to take us back to your formative years. What fueled your fascination for acting and how it all started for you?
Well, that goes way back because it really started when I saw John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever when I was a kid. And I said, I want to do that. And I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know if that meant I wanted to be a dancer in New York, or if it meant, but then I kind of figured it out later that, no, actually, I want to do that thing where, these people were acting, and I slowly, it was always sort of a fantasy. And I slowly, I was in plays in high school and stuff like that. And after high school, then I, took a few years, didn't really know exactly what I was going to do. I was also, heavy into drumming and had a band. And I sort of was presented with a question, what would you rather pursue for money? My dad said to me one day, I thought, money? I never even thought about that before. I thought, well, I think I'd rather do acting for money than music. Music just seemed like a little more precious or something like that. So I went to New York and I got into a acting program there. And that really started the journey. I was 20, I moved to New York when I was 21. And the acting program I was in was Mike Nichols School. Mike Nichols and Paul Sills. Paul Sills started Second City, so it was a huge improvisational influence in the school, as well as. And Mike got his career started with Paul, with the Compass, and later in Second City. So it was a real sort of Chicago improvisational vibe. And that was it. I mean, I was there for a couple of years, and then I stuck around New York and did lots of theater and lots of theater, and went off and did regional stuff with friends, and then eventually made my way to LA, where I started doing TV. Well, continued to do theater. I mean, I did theater for 10 years in LA and all over the country, and then I got into TV, and that was that sort of took a lot of my. It was like a good 10-year chunk of my life. And then I got into one fine day. I was sort of scratching my head, like thinking, in every acting career, there's ebbs and flows. And especially in LA, where I was, I mean, here I'm one of, a handful of guys that look like me, but in LA, of course, there's 70,000 guys that look like me at every audition. So, there were lots of rejections, and there was just one of those periods where I wasn't getting any work. I wasn't getting arrested. Nothing was happening. Even though I'd been working a lot, and then I was not working a lot, and then working a lot and doing a lot of theater, and then doing TV and theater and not doing anything, doing construction, But during one of those down phases, I picked up my grandfather's camera. He had left me his cameras, and he had been an avid amateur photographer. After he retired, he left me all of his cameras and lenses, and I picked up one of his cameras one fine day, and that was it. I just kind of instantly thought, well, maybe I'll do this while I'm waiting for another job. And that just completely took over my life for the next 12, 13 years.
You were not acting in that period.
Not only was I not acting, I had no interest in acting at all.
Okay.
None. Zero. I wouldn't go to the theater anymore. I'd look at movies and I wouldn't think about the actors. Sometimes I think about lighting and color and direction. But I wouldn't think about acting at all. It was very strange because I had always thought that I would be an actor. And now suddenly here I was, a photographer, and not only a photographer, but then I also started playing drums again in a very popular band in LA. And I started writing, and I just kind of felt like, wow, man, I put all my creative eggs in one basket. And now and it's just like, there's so many ways to be creative. It's not, acting is not the end all be all, or it's not, period. It certainly at that time, I felt that very deeply.
Right. So, amid all of this, what brought you to India? I mean, what can you recall about your early days here? The cultural shift that you had to deal with? How did you, acclimatize to this ethos, this new place? It
was like, I had this feeling, I was telling somebody recently, I had this feeling, it was a cross between being like scared shitless, just afraid for my life. I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been to the other side of the world, literally. So it was this great unknown. So there was part of it that was very scary. And then I had this sort of underlying calm feeling that there was something about it, maybe that I was going home. And I know that sounds very cheesy, but there was something quite real about that feeling. And when I came here, honestly, I didn't have any ambitions to do a book. I certainly didn't have any. There was no sort of intention about doing anything about anything work-wise. I just wanted to see a different part of the world and go on a trip, and that's what I did. And then of course, I brought my camera. I was taking lots of pictures, and then I came to Bombay, and I didn't know anyone, and I thought, well, maybe I can meet some actors. Maybe I could do a project on actors in Bombay or something like that. And I just started telling people, hey, I'm doing a project.
Right.
I kind of just talked it into existence. Right. And then I just started meeting people, and I met Guneet Munga, and then she was like, I'm between projects right now. I'll introduce you to some actors, and that's how it started.
Okay. Because your book is like one of the glaring highlights of your career. So how did you come up with this idea? And during that entire process, who all did you meet and interact with? And what was some, memorable experience from that gig of yours?
First of all, it was a huge learning curve because I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anyone. It's not like I came here. Yeah, no, I'm serious. I didn't come here with the intention of doing this. I didn't know anything about Bollywood. I didn't know anything about the families. I asked a friend of mine, when I came here, I said, a new friend that I had met here, and I said, put together a real interesting, diverse list of actors. Okay. And he wrote down this huge list, and I didn't recognize. I thought, Salman Khan, I think that sounds familiar. That was it. That's all I knew. I didn't know anyone else. So that was a huge challenge, and a great challenge too, because then once I started the project, then I felt like, okay, wow, I've got a lot to learn. And I did a lot of research while I was here in the midst of, talking to everyone and sending emails. And there was a thing called, it was like the actor's book or something. There was some book that was supposedly had actors' numbers. And sometimes it did, like Prem Chopra, like his number was there, and I called, I was like,
Okay.
hello. And he said, hi, this is Prem. And I said, oh, hi, I'm Mark Bennington. I'm doing my photography book. And and then I just slowly started getting in touch with more people. And it was pretty much at the end of, the project. I think I'd interviewed and photographed about 120 plus actors.
Oh
and
my
there
God.
were some people that were easier to get in touch with. Some people that were, Salman was actually quite difficult to get in touch with. Some people were Vijay Raj was very hard to get in touch with just because he's constantly busy. These character actors are always busy, traveling. So, and then the bigger stars were sometimes, and then there are, some of the biggest stars that were just not interested in being in the book. And that was fine. That was totally fine. Like whoever understood the idea of the book and wanted to be a part of it, then that's who I wanted to be in.
Did you also meet any struggling actors at that time that were not prominent, but, went on to become, big stars? Like in the current scenario, they were really big stars.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone that I was hanging out with, that I was hanging out with, interacting with, like Huma was always around, Swara was always there. I mean, Ranveer had just done, we only hung out a few times only because I was hanging out with Shanu a lot, but Ranveer was there, but he had just done that, his first big film. And so he was, so he was off and running. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there were a lot of, I know I'm forgetting, I'm trying to, I know I'm forgetting people.
It's very old. The thing is it's very hard to recall all these things. Maybe especially after meeting so many.
Yeah. And it was something that I really just, it's not that I took it for granted. They didn't even know they were going to be big stars. We were just all, they were acting and I was here and hanging out and had a camera and we were all just, you know what I mean? So it was a very casual scene.
So how did you get back into acting? I mean, what was your first major role in Bollywood or your first major Indian project? Was it Vyomkesh Bakshi or were you also part of some other, projects before that?
There was a film called The Letters, which was an international film that Tess was casting. And that was 2000, I want to say 13, something like that. And I had no interest in acting, like none. Like she said, come and read for this role. We need a white guy and we need a Britisher and how's your British accent? And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'm not interested and really kind of blew it off. But then she convinced me, but then actually I just started dating my wife now. So we were just courting, at that time. And I thought, well, if I get this, then it'll be a free trip back and I can hang out with Nancy. So, and that's exactly what happened. I auditioned, I got the role, and then I came back and I really, for me, it was not a great experience. Acting wise, I hated being, in a trailer for hours and hours and hours and hours and doing nothing. I just was so bored and didn't really, now I can sort of use my time better, but at the time I was very antsy.
You were very detached.
Yeah, and also, and I was so, I was bored. So I was like, no, this is the last time I'll ever do that. And then, of course, like a year or two later, we got married and my friend was working with Debakar on Vyomkesh, and he said, any chance you're going to be in India? I said, we're getting married next month. And he said, can you please audition for this thing? There's this great role. I said, dude, I really don't want to. I don't want to act anymore, period. He said, please just do the, please. I put together an audition. I sent it and I thought, oh God, I really don't care. And of course I got it. I think the more you don't care, or the more it's not that you don't care, it's just, it's not that important if you get it or if you don't, then more likely you're more likely to get it. Just, I don't know how the universe works like that, but
right.
But in any case, I got that. And then even that was it was just very difficult because, it was a lot of Hindi and I didn't speak any Hindi at the time. It was very difficult for me. And scenes were being written right before we were shooting them. And it was just really, I didn't feel like I was doing justice acting wise at all. I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. I was just hanging on to the edge of the cliff by my fingernails, trying to get the sounds.
Sounds right.
Just I was just saying sounds in a particular order. That's all it was.
Right.
For me. And so that was not a great creative experience. And then of course a few years later, then I was in town. The book was launching, and my friend Shruti called and she said, "Hey, there's this film, Permanu." She said, "It's a lot of Hindi. Are you okay with that?" I was like, sure, that's whatever. I was like, sure. I said, sure, because I didn't really care. And she kept asking me to audition. I kept on blowing off the audition. So yeah, I'll come tomorrow. And then tomorrow came, and then I said, yeah, I'll do it next Thursday. And eventually I went in and read for it and got it and met the director. And next thing I know, I was in Rajasthan and we were shooting. And that was around the time then, that was summer of 2017.
17, yeah.
Yeah, then I was here for an extended period of time shooting that. And I started getting a lot of I don't know how, but people somehow get your number and they somehow reach out to you on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. They say, "Hey, we're casting this thing." And next thing you know, I said to my wife, it was just that, it's always in some sort of alignment of time where she had just started writing her dissertation for a PhD. I was sort of getting very fed up with my photography stuff in New York. My studio I had in New York was just a real hustle, a real grind, because every great photographer in the world lives in New York, and it's so competitive. So I was looking for maybe something different. So I kind of just jumped off that boat and got onto we got onto this other boat that just happened to be passing at the right time. And suddenly then we're here. And as soon as the day I got off the plane, I went and read for Kesari, which I got. And then I read for this TV show, which I also got. And it seemed like, wow, this is, when the world responds to you, if you want to go in a direction, or if you think, I think I can go that way, and the world suddenly just pulls up a car right next to you and said, "We're going this way," then you're sort of on the right track. So that's what it felt like.
In that process, you were slowly, rediscovering your love for acting again.
Yeah, that's what I feel like in retrospect now, those early projects, my attitude was I was just jumping from this ship to this ship, and this was the one that was paying. So it was kind of more about, the acting was always there because it had been a former true love of my life. So that never disappeared. But at the same time, I wasn't, and maybe it was a good thing. I'm just thinking about this now. Like, I used to overanalyze roles. I used to overanalyze dialogue. I used to overanalyze, my project. And now I was just sort of approaching it in a very practical way, in a very, I guess from a more mature place, just a very, intuitive place, and trusting my instincts. But just to go back, like those first few projects, I felt like in retrospect, I was kind of just doing it for the money and just letting just hoping for the best. And then, a few projects in, that's when I feel like, oh, I started getting the bug again, and then I started feeling like, oh, I want to do a good job, and I want to, I want the project to be good, and I want to be good in the project, and it was all about this sort of putting the best foot forward instead of just sort of like, oh yeah, sure, you want me to do it? Yeah, sure, I can do that. That's easy. That sort of attitude. So I feel much more, and everything I'm doing now is just much more invested. And I think you can see or I feel like, some of the projects that are coming my way are sort of a manifestation of me getting, more invested in it.
And they're very nuanced. For example, Donze in Saas Bhavan, it's a very, nuanced character. It's not an easy character to play. I cannot think of any other, white actor to essay that role with so much of, determination and such ease. So was it challenging?
It was, I tell you what was challenging was, first of all, the French accent. I pride myself on being pretty good at accents, and have done quite a lot of accents throughout my career, even in my LA days. but Homie's thing was like, first of all, I was like, wow, my audition scene was the drug experience scene.
Yeah.
And that was I was like, wow, this is going to be like, okay. So I just went for it. And then met Homie. He had cast me in, I had done Inglesi Medium, very small role of a cop. And so his thing was, the French accent. And I said, don't worry. I said, I'll get it. And sure enough, I really worked on it. I picked, somebody whose French accent I really liked, who really seemed to fit the bill. It wasn't just a guy from Paris or something like that. It wasn't, it was much more sort of international. There's a more international vibe. He kept on saying Donze is this man, international man of the world and very creative and the way I work now, it feels like I feel I work best in a room by myself, just working it out, talking in the accent, running lines and improvising stuff, talking to the air characters that I have fantasies about, reading. And also I would read to my daughter, our oldest daughter. I would, if we have this little puppet lion, I would read in my French accent, and I would be like the lion, and go into this accent. She would say, "Papa, stop the accent." And so anyway, but it was, I felt like the big hurdle initially was the accent. And then, just the more I was feeling, you sort of start feeling the character, and it seemed like, okay, this guy's kind of fun loving. Like there's something lighter to him. And it was never discussed with Homie or with anyone really. But now that I see the show, I'm like, wow, this is actually quite a beautiful contrast.
Yeah.
Because he's got such warmth and such depth, and there's something so genuine and loving about him, which we see with Savi. And what a great contrast for her character, for the show in general, but for her character. So yeah, it was really fun. It was fun to work on, because also Homie he's so receptive. He's so open. There's such a fun, positive, collaborative vibe. He's always open to suggestions and talking about stuff. And it's just, it was a great work environment. Great.
And Bombay Begums is another gem of yours that I personally like. That series was mired in so many controversies. But there was so much of potential to your character and, the kind of relationship you shared with the person. So how challenging, how hard and challenging was that part? Because you had to film some really intimate scenes, and whether you feel, the outrage against it was, justified.
I don't know. I don't know. I guess because of the drugs, the kid, I think it was, if my memory serves me correctly, it was the kids doing drugs. It wasn't just drugs or people doing drugs. It was kids doing drugs.
Right.
That sort of came against the series. Yeah, I felt like there was something, in my opinion, I also thought I had a lot of potential, but it also seemed to be in some ways very heavy-handed in a particular, statement that it wanted to make. And that got a little bit claustrophobic or something. It didn't let the stories or the characters really come to life or breathe in a realistic way. That's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like my character, it was, it's always good for me working on things that are not, I work in a very expected genre. It's the token white guy usually, and everyone expects a particular something, and I'm always trying to bring something, some dimension to whatever role it is that I'm working on, trying to bring something human to it, even if it's, has been the token white guy. I've always tried to bring some humanistic quality to it. But with that one, it felt like, okay, this is something different. Like this is a love interest, which I had not done before. And and it seemed like there was some potential for maybe in a season 2 that there was some, that you could imagine that they would, she would leave the husband, and that wasn't clearly not working, and go in this new direction that had a bright, there was some lightness and brightness to that relationship. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of exciting to think about a season 2, but yeah, never came to fruition.
That was a brilliant performance on your end. I loved it particularly.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I was just thinking, it's funny because I was just talking recently about, the emotional quality. Somebody was saying, I forget exactly what they were saying, but talking about Danze and that Danze feels like the first emotional character that there hasn't really been a foreigner that has been that has had this emotional pull, like Bombay Begums didn't. Bombay Begums was a guy who, I really like you, and I think you like me, but you're married, and it's not going to work. But this is like this is a deep emotional pull, and the audience can feel it. I mean, it's like the feedback I'm getting it's so cool because it's just totally not, your typical foreigner role. I really feel blessed that I've been able to do it.
So now coming to RRR, so what's the story behind that? Coming to RRR, I mean, what's the story behind that? How did you back that part? And how was the rapport with Rajamouli, Ram Charan, and Junior NTR?
Oh, they're all great. I mean, and Rajamouli is he's so easy to be around, and you can just go right up and talk to him. Not that I had any reason to that much, but if I wanted to, I could, and did a few times. And and the stars were great. I mean, that was also a very positive work experience. It was also very cool. No shouting. Everyone's cool. Like everyone, it was a very relaxed set. No tantrums. It was a lovely set to be on. Great experience. I feel like my role's so tight. So many people, they come up to me and they say triple R, and I think, really? Like I had one line or two lines. I feel like I was barely in that film, but I certainly shot it. I probably shot 20 days, but you'd never know because I feel like you
could have made a very good antagonist. You could have made a very good antagonist in that film.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the South. There's certainly opportunity. I just finished this film, Devil in the South, where I'm the bad guy with NTR Jr.'s brother, older brother, and that was a great experience. That was a lot of fun too because it was my first, playing the main villain and being a really bad guy. It was really it was fun. I also again, like I was trying to bring something human, to the guy, and not just make him, a one note, one trick pony. They kept wanting me to. They said, like in every scene, okay, no, he's really angry. I said, he was really angry in the last scene. He's really angry in every scene. We have to play with it. There's got to be more layering. I said, I want this to be a good film. You don't just want a guy who's just shouting. So that was a sort of a real tug of war that I was having with them, but all in a very positive way. But just always, thinking about how can we make this better, and how can we bring some heart into it, even if the guy's a bad guy. There's got to be, how is there something that because when you do bring some heart into it, then that's what connects the audience. I think mm-hmm. It's not just a caricature of this mean guy.
Mm-hmm. No,
that gets boring.
Yeah. So now you have made India your home. Like you have a family here, you have your kids.
Yeah.
So do you ever mull over on what ifs? What if I had stayed in America? I might have had a flourishing career in Hollywood.
No.
And how did your family react to your this major life decision of moving to India?
I do think about it sometimes. I don't think I'd be acting. I mean, I can't imagine acting in the States again. Not really. Sometimes I try to imagine and I think, no, I been there, done that. Like I already tried that. Of course, I'm a different person now. But my family was very open. I don't have a big family. I'm an only child, and my dad was an only child. He passed away a couple of years ago, and my mom I moved my mom here. She is living here with us.
She's
So
like testing, like she's just fine with it, fine with the
she's
weather.
here. Yeah, she's right across the street, and we see her almost every day. So it was, for me, just internally, it's been a big sort of shift, and I feel like it's happened just in the last maybe year. That I always kind of imagine that, we'll be here 5 years and then we'll see what happens. Well, now we've been here 5 years, and it seems like things are just now, starting to pick up with, success of Rocket Boys and Sas Bahu, and there's a big YRF film about to come out where I've got a pretty juicy role, and so it feels like things are really starting to pick up and in a way that feels right. Meaning, these roles are not just, they're more than the token white guy. They're really quite quite interesting roles.
Right.
So it feels good, and I feel like I've come to terms with, I'm not gonna move back. I mean, we're here to stay. So
right. Coming back to your first film, which was Byomkesh Bakshi. So like in that you worked with Sushant Singh Rajput, and it's really sad that we don't have him today. So how was that? How was that experience acting with him?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I think he was just a few films in. He seemed very, I didn't know who he was too. And I like that. I like not knowing who people are, who, when I meet them, and because it feels like it's a more of a level playing field. Even with Dimple, I didn't know who Dimple, I knew that she had been a big star or was a big star, but I'd never seen a film of hers. And never. So that was a beautiful thing, actually, because it gave us, there was something that was very mutual that was happening. With Sushant, I mean, it was just a very cool, he was totally, he was very curious. He was very just deeply curious, incredibly intelligent. So we had a lot of just really cool conversations about a whole myriad of topics. And I thought he was a really good actor, and I thought he was a really, really good guy. We hung out a few times after the film, and it was really cool.
Right.
Sad.
Right.
It's always, it's always sad when somebody goes in that direction, and it's always sad, whether they're famous or whoever they are.
So you're also part of Sanjay Leela Bhansali's Sira Mandi, and you have a role in that. So how has that been, and what can you tell me about that film, or what can you tell? Of course, you cannot reveal the story of it, but how has been the experience? Because he's a visual master, storyteller.
Yeah, you can tell. I mean, I feel like it's shooting that has been different. It's been different than anything I've ever done in terms of the meticulousness of it. Okay. It takes consistently. I mean, out of all the days that I've shot, it's consistent. It's about a page and a half takes 12 hours.
Oh, okay.
That's a lot of, and it's take after take after, we'll do 17 takes or 18 takes or 25 takes. It is a very meticulous process, and it's just, adjusting, a thing, or just adjusting that little, it's so much attention to detail. It makes it, you gotta be a pretty good actor. You gotta have some chops to stick around on a thing like that. Otherwise, I think you just, I don't know what you do. I mean, everyone who's there is a really good actor. And because you have to just do it so many times, over and over and over and over with the same, it's like doing theater. It's like, you got to just bring it every single time. Because you never know if that's going to be the take. I mean, that's true in general for film, but especially when you're doing like 20 plus takes. It's been a really, it's been a great experience. Every experience is different, and there's some that just are kind of horrendous, and or some that are just, you just have to get through it, and others that are totally stimulating, and others that are, even if you may not think much of it at the time, you feel like, wow, years later, you're like, man, I really learned a lot from that. So I always feel like every experience, the pros and cons are always end up being pros, in the
Right.
long run.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mark, and best of luck for all the future projects. I mean, we want to see you more and more in the coming time.
You
And I
will,
hope
I promise.
And I hope you get more meteor roles too, like Don said.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. Take care.